Hi, I'm Jackie Unser, a speech-language pathologist at CID, Central Institute for the Deaf in St. Louis. Welcome to our course, Beyond the Scores, Evaluating Speech and Language Skills of Children Who Are Deaf and Hard of Hearing. When we meet a new child on our caseload, we start our assessment right away and look for the gaps in their abilities. For some children, the gaps are obvious. Others may be able to hold an everyday conversation and seem to follow along in the classroom, but with further observation, the gaps begin to show. Typically, evaluations will fall into one of these three categories. Inventories help track progress over time and often give a very clear visual representation of progress. At CID, we use a variety of inventories and checklists for everything from vocabulary and play to syntax and pragmatics. In the early intervention setting, inventories may be used especially in conjunction with parent discussions. Standardized assessments are often necessary in qualifying for services. They provide a consistent measure of growth over time and allow us to compare our children's skills to those of typically hearing peers. Finally, language samples give us a snapshot of a child's skills in a more natural context. They help compare what a child can do spontaneously versus what they can do within the more structured framework of a standardized test. Combining different types of evaluations is often necessary in order to gather a complete picture of a child's skills. In this course, we'll primarily cover how to gather the most helpful information through standardized assessments. For further information on language samples, see the Language Sample Analysis handout in the Resources tab. To prepare for an evaluation, we first need to gather the child's background information. Understanding a child's background history and factors that contribute to his communication development will help us understand why a child might be doing what he's doing when we begin to analyze his skills. For children who are deaf and hard of hearing, we need to gather the audiological history in addition to the medical, family, and educational history. Information such as degree of hearing loss, age of amplification, and device usage are critical factors to consider when analyzing a child's communication skills. We've gathered background information and are now ready to set up for our evaluation. Before testing, or any time we're working with a child who's deaf or hard of hearing, we want to consider the physical setup of the space. Our goal is to obtain an accurate picture of a child's speech and language skills, so we need to control as much as possible for factors that could impact his performance. Before we test a child, perhaps the most important thing to remember is to screen the child's audibility by completing a Ling sound check. If a child's devices aren't working as they should, then there's no point in continuing the testing. We've set up our room and the child has completed Lings, so we're ready to test. To compare our students' performance to that of typically hearing peers, don't make any modifications to the standard testing procedures. However, it's important to record the child's responses beyond just correct or incorrect. We want to know why he gave a particular response. Maybe the testing prompt included a concept that's truly unfamiliar, or perhaps the student did not hear a key part of the prompt. Or perhaps the student initially heard the information correctly, but had difficulty holding that information in his auditory memory. During evaluation, we want to pay attention to skills beyond the targets of the standardized test. As we begin testing and complete a Ling sound check, observe a child's level of independence with his devices. Is he able to replace his cochlear implant magnet or hearing aid on his own? If not, does he request help in any way? If a device is not working, does the child indicate that in any way? Perhaps an older student recognizes that a battery is dying and is able to independently replace the battery. That would be a wonderful skill to note. If a child is not yet independently manipulating his devices or recognizing when they're not working, this is important information to know when considering needed supports in the classroom. Standardized assessments are an essential tool in evaluating the language skills of a child who's deaf and hard of hearing. But to see the full picture, we have to go beyond the scores.